continuing story of Peyton Place. Starring Dorothy Malone as Constance Mackenzie, Warner Anderson as Matthew Swain, Ed Nelson as Michael Rossi, Mia Farrow as Allison Mackenzie, Ryan O'Neill as Rodney Harrington, and Barbara Parkins as Betty Anderson.
In Doctor's Hospital, Elliot Carson, gravely wounded by George Anderson's bullet, fights for his life. In the biggest house in Peyton Place, Leslie Harrington, in a very different sense, fights for his life also.
Constance?
I've been to the hospital.
It's been a long time since you've been in this house, Con.
I want to talk to you. About Elliot Carson. Before he went into surgery, Elliot said you came to the hospital to see him.
This morning.
He said you promised to clear him of Elizabeth's murder.
We discussed it.
Elliot said you made a promise.
Constance, he may die. If he does, what point would there be?
I've got to believe he's going to live.
Do you think I want him to die?
Do you think his death would absolve your promise?
You make me sound very cold-blooded.
You let him die a slow death in prison for 18 years. You know, whether he lives or not, Elliot's name's going to be cleared. I can get Elizabeth's diary. And if you won't go to the authorities, I will.
I told you I'd stop you.
No, I've taken away your threat, Leslie. I've told Allison about her father. I've told Allison there's no Mr. Mackenzie, that Elliot Carson's her father. I've known you all my life, Leslie, and I knew Catherine. I don't want to make that diary public.
What do you think that diary proves? Do you think it proves I killed Elizabeth?
No, it doesn't prove that.
Must have taken a great deal of courage to tell Allison the truth. How did you dare do that, Constance? How did you know she wouldn't turn her back on you afterwards? How did you know you wouldn't lose her?
If there's love, you have to depend on that. That's all you can do.
How do you know when there's enough love?
You don't know, Leslie. You just tell them and wait for the judgment. But you can't escape that judgment. Good night, Rodney.
Good night, Mrs. Mackenzie.
Nothing's that serious. If it is, the only way to talk about it is by sitting down, usually.
I only want one answer to one question.
Sons always want answers. Fathers don't always have them. I don't know what holds the sky up, for example.
Don't worry about it, Dad. It isn't up there anymore. It just came down. It's Paul Hanley telling the truth.
About what?
About you, Dad.
What did he imply that I did?
He didn't imply anything. He said you murdered his sister.
Paul Hanley's a very disturbed young man. I guess that's the kindest thing we can say for him.
Does that mean yes, Dad, or no?
What do you mean, does that mean yes or no?
Even a disturbed man can tell the truth.
I answered you.
Yes or no. I have to hear the words. Tell me you didn't kill her.
I didn't kill her.
Tell me there was nothing between you and Elizabeth Carson, will you?
I can't tell you that. Sooner or later, you'd find out I was lying. Elizabeth left a diary. Rod, I ask you to believe I didn't kill her. Can't you do that? Can't you just let it go at that?
I don't know.
Why not? Come on, look at me. You may not trust me right now, but don't turn your face away from me. Take my word for it, I didn't kill her. Please.
Do you know who did?
Yes, I do.
Well, I think you better tell me, Dad.
Judgment Day. I was responsible for Elizabeth's murder. I didn't murder her. I was responsible because my relationship with Elizabeth caused someone to become so jealous, so desperate, that in a moment of temporary insanity, Elizabeth was killed.
Elliot Carson.
Was not Elliot Carson.
Well, if it wasn't Carson, it was you. I mean, there are no other possibilities.
No, Rod, there's one. One. One.
There was Carson. There was you. I can't think of anything else. Somebody from outside.
I told you what there was between me and Elizabeth. I told you it was a murder that came out of jealousy.
There was Elliot Carson. There was you. And
somehow your mother found out. I don't know whether it was stupidity or meanness on my part or some need to have your mother know. I think about it often. She came to me and demanded that I break it off with Elizabeth.
she demanded.
She didn't believe I'd stop seeing Elizabeth Carson.
I was so afraid that my father was a murderer. Only it wasn't my father at all. It was... It was... my...
I I swear to you, if your mother were alive, I wouldn't have told you, boy. Rod, I kept silent. What did you want me to do? When? When was I supposed to tell you?
Claire, you coming to the hospital with me in the morning?
Yes?
What's all this about?
I decided I'd catch up on some of the new procedures.
Oh, and I thought you were going to relax and be frivolous for once.
You ought to know Claire better than that. Good night.
Good night.
Michael, good night, dear.
Good night.
It was a nice thing he did at the hospital.
What?
The little talk with Betty Anderson.
You heard about that? Well, sometimes it's not good to be alone.
Sometimes one wishes he were alone. What's wrong?
Oh, I have a headache.
It's a classic excuse out of some Victorian novel, isn't it?
Those are the vapors. Seriously, though, my head does ache.
I know what you need, some fresh air and exercise. One night this week, why don't we go down to the pond, cut some fancy figures on the ice before it melts, eh?
Is that an invitation or a prescription, Doctor?
Is the medicine so hard to take?
Allison, are you home?
Betty tells me you'll be spending the night.
Yes, if that's all right with you.
Well, of course it is. Have you called your mother and told her?
No, I haven't.
Well, why don't you do it now while you're thinking about it?
I'd rather not.
Do you mind if I call her? Hello? Connie? Julie Anderson. Oh, hello, Julie. It seems we have an unexpected dinner guest tonight, your daughter. Oh? Well, I just found out she hadn't told you, so I thought I'd better call and put your mind at ease. Thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. Anyway, the girls have decided it would be fun for Allison to spend the night. I knew you wouldn't mind, but, would you tell Allison I'd like to talk to her? Well, I suggested she call, but... Oh, Connie, you know how girls are their age. Tell Allison